Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. Happy Monday. It's NFL Draft Week, and we're here today to answer some of your questions. Thank you to everyone who participated, went on to the old Twitter sphere and responded with whatever was on your mind. I am hopeful that we will get to each and every one of those questions. And by we, I mean myself and none other than PFF Fantasy connoisseur, legend, playmaker, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. Dwain, how's it going?
Connoisseur today. I like it, Ian. I am a connoisseur of PFF data for sure. I'm also a connoisseur of NFL draft. So yeah, man, like this is where like the official like start to the season. We love free agency and everything, but like the draft is like, because once the draft's done, like we can really like wrap up projections, get all that kind of stuff done. So man, I'm stoked. I'm super excited. Can't wait to answer some questions. You know, got to listen to the people. I know you're a man of the people. You're a man of the people.
The funny thing about connoisseur, I'll use it in an article from time to time, and like that, I am so bad at spelling that word that I will like put it, it's underlined red. So I say, okay, what's the spelling? And it's like, we don't know, man. And I put it in Google, and then Google's even like, hey, yeah, like what are you talking about? Like concise or something? So
it's just like you've messed it up so badly, we don't even know what you're trying to say, Hartitz. It's like that Billy Madison thing. We are all now dumber for having sat here and listened now.
Yes, it is NFL Draft Week. We're not going to be talking about it that much. Dwain, like, no football has been played in 3 months. How is it that mock drafts are changing this rapidly, one day after another? Unless it's just a bunch of people paying way too much attention to one nameless, faceless report after another, man. I think that's the part that annoys me about the NFL draft. Like, I can get behind a big group of people, going out there, making their own big boards, saying like this, taking a stand on this is how I grade these wide receivers. Like, let's see how this does versus the NFL. Shout out Jetpack Galileo on this podcast. He's gone back and shown that his wide receiver foam grades have done better than what draft capital would suggest. That's cool as hell. Why spend the entire month, Dwain, just digging through one report after another to maybe get one guy, going one spot ahead of another? I don't know, man. Neither of us really do it. I don't want to piss off all the people that listen to us.
Because there's a lot of people that are gambling on it. Now, there's a ton of people that are putting bets on like where these guys are going to go. I'm in a thread like that, and it's a ton of smart guys. Like Anthony
what are those
Nico.
limits? Are the limits even good though, or are they more like prop limits?
They're more like prop limits, I think. But still, that thing just lights up all day long, that instant message group. It's a ton of really smart minds in the industry, but I think that's a big part of it. But at the end of the day, I don't think teams draft boards, at least like if you've really got a process, like how much would your draft board be changing at the last second? Like, that's probably an indicator of bad process unless you really truly did get this all of a sudden new piece of information that you never knew before. Like maybe it's a red flag or something like that. But I think a lot of it at this point is just smoke screens. Maybe not at the first pick, but in picks like this year's, every draft's a little bit different. I'm sure there's some truth to some of these, but hopefully teams are not like talking themselves out of a player. It should be down to 2 or 3 guys if you're sticking at your pick and you're like, okay, who are we taking out of this 3? It shouldn't be all of a sudden, no, we're going to move this guy up 10 spots. Like that just shouldn't really be the case.
Like last year, the whole Mac Jones thing, it was like just watching everyone.
God, yeah.
February and March, like consensus. Everyone's like, Mac Jones is the QB5. And then we start hearing these reports about him going to San Fran. And all of a sudden, everyone and their mother is talking about, well, actually, when you look at Mac Jones and what he brings to the table, he should be the top 3 quarterback. And it's like, you never thought that. You saw an Adam Schefter report talking about that. I've now changed your entire mindset. But whatever. Not my.
Hey, Dynasty Twitter does the same thing. People get bored, It's like, hey, everybody loves Treylon Burks, now everybody hates Treylon Burks. I'm like, cool. Now's a great time to be drafting Treylon Burks, I guess. Drake London, everybody was off on him, then everybody got over onto him. It's just like Garrett Wilson kind of rose up late. He was our number 1, like from the get. Or it was at least mine. I think he was in your top 2 or 3. But yeah, it's I don't move these guys around as much. The only thing I'm moving them for is expected draft position based on the mock drafts. Which, to your point, there can be some noise in those. So I am happy like that this week we won't have to just guess anymore. We'll just get to lock it down. We'll be like, yep, this is where the player was drafted, and we can move forward.
We can finally Drew lock it in. I can't wait. And now all my friends hate me because I always confirm plans by saying Drew lock it in. Story for another day. Let's get to these questions. Again, thank you to everyone that did respond to my tweet. We'll be trying to do this each and every week. Usually we'll be out on Friday. Just the freaking genius I am, forgot to actually hit enter on our Wednesday podcast last week, which explains why we pushed this to Monday. But all that nonsense aside, Dwayne, let's get to some questions. First one from @1912 Fantasy. Any draft prospects with off-field issues that could cause them to fall? I do not know this. So what did I do? I went to someone that does know this, and in my opinion, probably the single best draft analyst in the business, with all due respect to our own PFF's Mike Renner, but Dane Brugler at The Athletic, and just what the work he puts into the beast every single year is absolutely insane. So what I did was I went to Dane's The Beast, and I just Control-F'd off the field. And there was like 40 things, mostly good, but some guys with bad. These were the prospects that had bad off the field issues that caused Dane to bring it up and note that it could cause them to fall. Southeastern Louisiana quarterback Cole Kelly, Kentucky offensive tackle Dari Rosenthal, Arkansas D lineman Trey Williams, Oklahoma D lineman Perrion Winfrey, Louisiana D lineman Taylon Humphrey, Clemson cornerback Mario Goodrich, Arizona State cornerback Jack Jones, and Georgia cornerback Darian Kendricks. So doesn't immediately look like any skill position guys. I don't know if there's a Tyreek Hill necessarily type of guy in this class, but Dwayne, that was actually... Again, I know none of these guys are super fancy relevant, but wanted to answer the question. But on a side note, one of the interesting things that I actually found during some of my process this offseason was how condensed high-performing rookie wide receivers have been in the top 2 rounds. We've only seen 3 rookie wide receivers drafted outside of the top 2 rounds turn in even a top 24 season since 2012. Keenan Allen, round 3, Amon-Ra St. Brown, round 4, and Tyreek Hill, round 5, obviously wouldn't have been going there if he didn't have off-the-field stuff. So the off-the-field concerns really do show. Again, not sure that any of our favorite prospects have them to begin with, but if you are going to be chasing an exception, someone going on a day 3, having one of those off-the-field concerns, someone that should have been going far higher if we didn't have this issue, that's probably what you're trying to look for there, to hang your hat on an exception.
Yeah, and I mean, people just remember the Tyreek Hills, Stephon Diggs, guys like that have been pushed down. I don't think there are any of those this season at the skill position, but I mean, I haven't researched it as much as you did, but I mean, if you went and checked with all of Dane's stuff, then I feel pretty good about the list that you have in front of us. So I don't know that, and sometimes we don't know though. Like you'll see a player unexpectedly fall, and then after the draft, you find out, oh, they fell because of red flag, why? So I mean, we may know more about, this kind of question like next week. We may have some more thoughts on it.
From @Dalzo_Connor, wondering about Baker Mayfield and this cool little open receiver stat I formulated. So Sunday, I like to spend a lot of my time watching USFL, but I still put my fantasy football analyst hat on plenty during the week. One of the cool things I found, and one of the new data sets we have at PFF, is looking at how many open receivers have been available per play for these quarterbacks. So I went ahead, took the dropbacks, and looked at where 0 pass catchers were considered open per dropback. Number 1, meaning highest dropback percentage with 0 open wide receivers, was Aaron Rodgers at 20.9%. Number 2, Kyler Murray. Number 3, Davis Mills. Number 4, Russell Wilson. And number 5, Jalen Hurts. This question specifically was about where Baker Mayfield lies. Seemingly, I think, maybe a Browns fan, maybe a Baker defender of sorts. I'm sorry, no. Baker Mayfield finished 18 among 31 qualified quarterbacks, actually an above average rate of open receivers, right alongside Joe Burrow and Kirk Cousins. So we've talked a lot about separation, open receivers throughout this offseason. This one's a little bit, different. We're not tracking every single receiver. We're not tracking overall separation necessarily, but I do think it makes sense, particularly looking at the top at, Aaron Rodgers and Kyler Murray. Obviously, Kyler didn't have Hopkins for most of the year. Old man A.J. Green wasn't exactly making a habit of breaking free, and we couldn't get Rondale Moore on the field half the time. And for Rodgers, one of the findings you had this offseason was that Devontae Adams, most double-covered receiver in the league. So it makes sense to me that if you could take away Devontae, I know I saw the one freaking play from the NFC divisional round that everyone loves to bring out about Aaron Rodgers. I understand Allen Lazard was open, but generally, Dwayne, this wasn't the exactly easiest, offense for the Packers and Aaron Rodgers to get going with last year.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. Like if you're really depending on Devontae Adams as much as they do, and he has one of the highest target shares in the league, it just makes sense. Like that these teams are going to scheme that up. They're going to try to take these other players away. That's what scares me about an Allen Lazard. Yeah, we could be coming into more opportunity, but as a guy that really has never popped in yards per route run, has never popped in targets per route run. And now all of a sudden it's like now ADP is all that matters. As long as he goes like after all the young rookie upside guys, I'm fine if you want to take a swing at Allen Lazard. Just don't. What happens a lot of times with these guys, Ian, is by the time we get to draft season, in August and September for especially like redraft, we get past Dynasty. What will happen is an Allen Lazard they'll move up to the 9th, 8th round. Right. And that's where I start saying, okay, just tap the brakes. Right now, Lazard's like round 11, 12, 13. So if we get through the draft, maybe they only add one other player. Lazard's still going to be on the field. We could look at it. But I just be careful about expecting a really big jump, especially whenever you've had someone like Devontae Adams already taking away so much coverage. Even if the targets per route run, like you want to dismiss those because you're like, well, I mean, they're throwing everything to Adams. The yards per route run, should have really popped a little bit more for what we were seeing with a guy like Lazard. Whenever you've got a great quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, they use a lot of play action, a lot of things that work well in the league that we see drive up yards per route run. And there was a dominant force on the other side of the field. So those are the big lessons I take away from whenever I look at a player, that where the offense has been centered around them and then they leave, and you want to really look at the other guys that are left and like what the actionable takeaways are for fantasy. You just have to dig into some of those things. And hey, on Baker, just real quick, I don't know. I'll share my screen real quick, Ian, because I got to give this thing like props. People that haven't seen the PFF QB annual, you guys have to go check this out. There are just some of that. I mean, there are some of the absolute.
Does most of that work, right?
Yeah. And let's see here. Oh, where'd I go? I just dropped it. There we go.
Oh my gosh!
Tell me when you can see it.
We're good now. We had like a screen inception going on there for a
picture. Picture of a picture of a picture of a picture. So here's Baker's accuracy charting. This stuff is so cool. And so what you get is you'll see accurate, 57.2%. So that was 0.6% below the NFL average. And then this next range. So this accurate is pinpoint, meaning you put it right on them exactly where it was supposed to be.
Right on the numbers.
But if you've got it high, front, low, back, that means it was accurate. It may have been slightly inaccurate, but the receiver could still catch it, right? The receiver may have to make a little bit tougher catch, but it's a catchable ball. And so you see and then you see the next range out, which is overthrow, in front, underthrow, behind, and those are uncatchable. And so over here to the right, you got a nice little, cheat code. So Baker's if you look at his accurate plus, he was actually fine. But if you look at his accurate, it was 20, which was right at the league average. Catchable, inaccurate passes, he was second. Uncatchable pass rate was 29th, which was worse in the league. So there's a lot of cool stuff like this over here. Now, I haven't been able to chart all this, Ian, to say how much of this stuff, year over year, how consistent does it stay? Mm-hmm. But with Baker, if you go up, and people can kind of see all this cool stuff that's here. But real quick, I want to just show this one thing up here at the top. So these are the key things for me with Baker that I really like to look at. So on the third downgrade, 22 out of the 32 qualifiers, negative graded play, which means PFF, everything is graded on a scale of -2 to +2. Okay, so if you're on the right side of the scale on the plus, you get a positive grade rate. If you're on the left side, you get a negative. So 26 out of 32. Great under pressure, 25 out of 32. Clean pocket's the really big one that we can duplicate year over year, 22 out of 32, and that's been a problem, for Baker. On target passes, 30th out of 32. So a lot of the deal with Baker, I know we were talking about the receivers, and he didn't necessarily have great receivers last season, but some of these things stem back to seasons before where we've seen pretty similar data for Baker that he's just not that accurate, and he even struggles whenever he's kept clean.
Couple questions on Rondale Moore and the Arizona Cardinals, who we've talked about a lot, but you know what, Dwayne? I'm always fun to hype up Rondale Moore, particularly before the draft happens and, Cliff Kingsbury has to ruin our hopes and dreams potentially. But from @Mike___B along with @Matt Lang_. Basically, what's our overall thought with Rondale Moore now that Christian Kirk is gone? And we're wondering, does AJ Green concern us in regards to Rondale's utilization? So, Dwayne, I think AJ Green coming back is arguably arguably like awesome for Rondale Moore, because this is someone that we know he's going to play on the outside, but that's fine. He's a starting outside receiver. We knew Rondale was never going to get that. I mean, when Green got hurt last year, Antoine Wesley played ahead of Rondale Moore as an outside receiver. Like the fact AJ Green is back and we don't have to see them, hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, draft someone and then start to wonder where's that guy going to work into everything. I'm feeling better about AJ Green there than anyone that they might have drafted in the top 3 rounds of the draft. You could say like, yeah, it would have been better if they just didn't add anyone, entered every single game with 3 wide receivers. That's not realistic though, obviously, in the NFL. So right now, Dwayne, I think we've the way we've talked about Rondale Moore, hard to rank him, too highly into like the wide receiver 3 range, but he could be there once we get the, certainness from the draft that he is going to be the starting slot. He's looking like the number 2, number 3 option at worst in this offense behind only Hopkins and maybe Zach Ertz. All wheels up for Rondale Moore. And honestly, the Chase Edmonds, him leaving helps too, because we did see some willingness to use Rondale Moore in the backfield. We'll see if someone like James Cook ends up coming to Arizona. But Dwayne, I think the big takeaway that you've, done a great job, telling people throughout, it's been great to get Rondale Moore, roster exposure. That's the word I was looking for. Been great to get Rondale Moore exposure, because right now he's only going to go up in ADP as we get closer to the season, because it's going to be good news. Whereas someone like Gabriel Davis, we're assuming a lot more highly with him already.
Right. Yeah. Gabe Davis most likely is capped already. Like he's not going to go up in ADP no matter what. But if the Bills do draft, another receiver, you're going to get a discount. So if you like Gabe Davis, just because they draft a receiver doesn't mean that you then don't have to draft him. It just means you can get him at a cheaper price, right? Because the biggest part of receiver production is talent, right? Whereas running back, we know just get on the damn field, right? We know that you can score points. Obviously, talent comes into play there, but with receivers, we're much bigger, subscribers to the idea that you really have to be good to be able to get these targets. So with Rondale Moore, look, I'm with you. AJ Green doesn't bother me at all. They were going to either sign someone else, to your point, or draft someone else to play outside. That's not where Rondale Moore plays. So right now, knowing that AJ Green last season, looking at his targets per route run, setting right around 17%, yards per route run 1.6. Rondale Moore is actually higher in yards per route run, slightly, 1.64, and his targets per route run were actually higher at 0.24. So with Rondale Moore, we just need him on the field more. That's all. So the disaster for Rondale Moore would be if for some reason, the Cardinals drafted a slot receiver. Like that would be the killer, right? But I don't think that's going to happen. So I think we're going to get to see Rondale Moore play Christian Kirk's role. I think he will also get to work more vertical down the field, because Christian Kirk was a big part of that game. We know Rondale Moore has another gear. Cliff Kingsbury's already on the record saying, look, we're not going to tether him to the damn line of scrimmage. We're not just going to keep him there. We're going to move him around. Remember, the year before, that was the argument everybody used against Deebo Samuel. Oh, no, you don't want Deebo. ADOT's too low. ADOT's too low. Deebo came out and gave everyone the double bird. Double birds to everyone, all around. Deebo just crushed it. So, we're not saying that Rondale Moore is Deebo Samuel, but look, he's a talented guy, second-year guy, a huge yak player. So even if his ADOT, Ian, just from like a 1 to an 8, but we got him to run 70% of the routes and stuff. That was the only thing holding Rondale Moore back last year. It wasn't even just the stuff around the line of scrimmage. He was only out there for 40% of the routes for the Cardinals. I think this year you're easily going to see him right around 70%, where Christian Kirk was last year. I think the fantasy points can follow, and there's plenty of upside, especially if Hopkins takes a little step back. And then we know AJ Green is older, Zach Ertz is older. I think you could tell yourself, if you wanted to be, sometimes I know you get in these super optimistic moods. I don't know if you're in one today or not, Ian. We're about to find out. But you could tell a story where Rondale Moore could become the number 1 target on the Cardinals. I think he's probably the number 2 or 3. I think he's safe to slot him in 2 or 3. But, Hopkins is getting older. Ertz is getting older. A.J. Green is older. He could be the most explosive player on the team. And if they decide to figure out ways to really get him the ball, he could explode.
Look, before Hopkins got hurt, he wasn't putting up the wide receiver 1 numbers we were used to, because, I remember doing this in my wide receiver tight end breakdowns every week. The top 5 targets on the Cardinals were all within 5 or 6 targets of each other. So Rondale could be the 1A with a 1B or 1C there. Hopefully he's at least in that top trio. But you said it, Dwayne, these guys are old. And that was, yesterday, just awesome, just really exciting life I live. I decided to go through every single running back, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and tight end. Take the average age to get an idea of who has the youngest skill position group, who has the oldest. Top 5 youngest skill position groups: the Ravens, the Lions, the Broncos, the Browns, and the Steelers. Top 5 oldest. The oldest is, in fact, the Arizona Cardinals, then the Green Bay Packers, Buccaneers, Titans, and Chargers. So, yeah, not exactly getting younger. I'm not, this isn't exactly necessarily correlated with us needing to fade them or anything, but between Nuke, Ertz, AJ Green now, it's like, my God, guys, let's get the youngins some run. And it sounds like they're going to. So, from @_Matt Lang _ again, Dwayne, Leonard Fournette or Antonio Gibson for the next 2 years in Dynasty? I kind of lean Fournette after this contract, man. Yeah.
Leonard Fournette. Look, I'll tell you, on these two players, you really shouldn't look past this year. Antonio Gibson only has third round draft capital tied up. We've already seen them re-sign J.D. McKissick. So McKissick, I believe, Ian, if you can pull it up, I believe he signed a 2-year deal. So the way I'm looking at it, as Antonio Gibson's going into year 3, it could be year 5 before he is, even if it were to happen, right, to be, how many is it? 2 years?
2 year, yep.
Yeah. So, it's a situation where we got to wait now at least another 2 years before Gibson gets the passing down role that we all really want and we think that he could handle. But now, he's not even going to get that for 2 years. So it's like he'll be a year 6 running back as a 3rd round pick. Who knows if Washington will even re-sign him? Who knows if anyone else will sign him? I'd rather just take Leonard Fournette, who we know has top 6 RB potential this year without any help. Antonio Gibson would become that if J.D. McKissick got hurt in training camp. So there's a path still for Antonio Gibson. And if that happened, then you could say, okay, well, great. Then if he blows up, maybe Washington turns around and gives him a better deal, right away, because he probably I don't know if this is his last. Well, he probably has a year 4 on his deal, yeah. But he won't have a year 5 on his deal because he wasn't an early pick. So that's the path where Gibson could still outshine. But for me, whenever I'm looking at so many variables like that, my decision is, I'm just going to take what I think is going to be the best commodity this year because both of them have questions. Fournette's question will be, after this year, we're probably going to look up and he's going to be really close to a lot of the thresholds that we don't like, as far as some of these older running backs.
I think the conversation around Fournette is still scarred from his time in Jacksonville.
It is.
He was generational, and I think that word, I hate when people overuse it, but I think for him, generational recruit coming out of high school at running back, absolutely unbelievable at LSU when he was healthy and out there. Comes in, unfortunately, stuck with some Jaguars teams. Whatever, still manages to go to the AFC Championship and scores plenty of touchdowns along the way. Has a bad falling out. What's he done in Tampa Bay? Usually balled the hell out with whatever opportunities he was getting. I was watching some highlights from that Super Bowl run, man. Lombardi Lenny was a game changer out there. So what did the Buccaneers do? They paid him $21 million over 3 years. Here are the running backs on non-rookie deals that are being paid more than Fournette currently. Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, and Christian McCaffrey. Fine. Rank Fournette last out of that group. That's still pretty damn good. And the biggest thing, Dwayne, we don't have a J.D. McKissick to take those targets. We just have Fournette to go get those targets.
And you hadn't even talked about the offense. The Bucs offense versus Washington's offense. I think there's enough questions and where we'll be with Fournette next year, but versus even Gibson, I would just lean into the guy that I think can give me the most this year.
Interesting question here from @JStengrund. At what point does having too much startable depth in Dynasty begin to hurt you? Is it better to trade the depth away for future picks, condense into higher end assets, or simply hold for the sake of roster depth? Thanks, guys. So, Dwayne, I think it, like anything, it's going to depend on your league, depend on exactly, what that depth looks like. But I will say, sometimes I've been in dynasty leagues or just regular formats where you only got to start, 9 or 10 guys in the super flex. And all of a sudden you are leaving some awfully good players on the bench. Other leagues, you do actually have to start 13, even 14 guys. And it, I think, does make more sense to try to keep as many bodies involved. Do you have any overarching thoughts on this? Again, I think it's more of a case by case basis. I would say in general, general, I think the Dynasty community they get a collective hard on that's maybe a little bit too much about like always planning for the future and shit, where it's like, why not be in win now mode? Why are we really looking further than 3 years down the road to begin with? How well can we accurately predict things more than a year or two away? So I think in general, if you think you have a window to go win now, go ahead and make that move, Dwayne, because like fuck playing for 2024. Let's go win this shit in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately in Dynasty, you're trying to balance those two things, right? How do I keep myself, equipped to be really good in the future, but also really competitive right now? And unfortunately, a lot of that starts right when you start the Dynasty League. Once that's happened, and then you're moving forward. Of course, yeah, we can make change. We can chart a new course and we can change. But the key for me is, and you said it depends. But it's really hard to find many teams that are truly deep across every position. So typically what I'm trying to do is trade depth from one position for a player at a position where I don't have the depth, right? Or I may not even have, like in some leagues, I may not even have a tight end I love. And so I'm more willing to trade away even younger wide receiver depth to get a tight end that I think can actually help me win this year. So I think it's really just about, what does your roster look like? What you mentioned, how deep, is the player pool? The other thing I'll say, is it also just depends on the value of the player. We talk about these cycles in the offseason of player value up, player value down. Well, in Dynasty, we see even bigger swings. So I think anytime you think you've got a player that's sitting on your bench and you think they may be at approaching like an all-time high in value, or even if they're not on your bench, like that's when I try to sell, is when the player is at what we think that all-time high value, and as long as it's not like a super young stud. Like right now, Justin Jefferson, he may be at his highest value ever, but I don't care. I don't want to trade Justin Jefferson. I'm not one of these sickos that's like, you just have to sell as soon as the value is out of max. So don't take it that way. It's more like you have a player that gets a rebound, in their value. Like a Leonard Fournette would be a great example. If you've got Leonard Fournette, as your RB4 for some reason sitting on your team and you only need to start 2, like Fournette's probably as valuable as he's going to be, but you have to find the right trade partner. You want to find another team that's also probably in win now mode. Of course, then you have to wonder, what is that going to do to your chances to win the league this year? So, I mean, it's very nuanced, but at the end of the day, if I've got an asset that I think, is probably being overvalued by the community, especially where they are in age and touches, and that Fournette one's a great example. And I've got the depth to move on, I will. Hell, I'll trade Leonard Fournette even if he's my RB2 on a winning team. If I've got if I've got 4 or 5 other guys sitting behind him that I know I can just basically rotate to get to my RB2, which you should have on any Dynasty roster. Like you should pretty much have 5, 6 guys just sitting there that you're just basically waiting for the injury, and then you're plugging them into your lineup. So it does also depend on the position.
I would say like Fournette and kind of that second contract running back that's starting to get about 27, 28. If you're able to sell them somewhere close to the top of their value, probably a good time too.
Yeah, like this year, Dalvin Cook, James Conner,
Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones, and you can worry about a little less when they're really good receiving profiles. They can typically make it a little longer, but no, I would still include, Aaron Jones. I think you still have to include them. I would just kind of sub-tier them, right? Here's these true kind of early down guys. All their value comes from that. And then these guys we know that stay involved in the passing game. Just trying to think like of some of the other names right now. Joe Mixon, I would sell Joe Mixon now. You're probably going to get another good year out of Joe Mixon. But if you can get the right deal on a player like Joe Mixon, I think the advice you just gave that's really good. McCaffrey, is right in that range as well. But again, it comes back to what's your goal? You trying to win this year? What does your roster look like? And can you get the value? The other thing is, man, I will not trade away. I don't care if their name is Leonard Fournette and it's a player that's at their highest value. If someone's not going to offer the right thing in return, then I'll just play him. I'll just keep him. And plus, how it goes. Other teams suffer injuries throughout the year, and all of a sudden, then you can trade Fournette for even more to somebody that's hungry later in the season.
From @DannyPalk. Why don't either of us think Drake London is good? I think this is tongue-in-cheek. I'm not positive, Dwayne, but just in case you have Drake London as your overall wide receiver 4, I have him as my wide receiver 3. I would bump him down to 4. It seems like we're getting, I don't know why Jameson Williams will be moving up the way he is unless teams have gotten some good news on his medicals. So if we knew for a fact that Jameson Williams is good to go for week 1, I would rank him redraft ahead of Drake London. But Wide receiver 4? I mean, yeah, I don't see him as the overall wide receiver 1, but, it doesn't mean we don't think he's good. So, Dwayne, we will be talking tomorrow about our top 5 quarterback, running back, wide receivers, and even a few tight ends. So, I think we'll save that Drake London discussion for then. But, yeah, we think Drake London's good, just maybe not best wide receiver in a pretty loaded class. For
Drake London, it's a good day to be good. He didn't get the great day to be great. It's a good day to be good. Yeah.
That's, it's not bad. We're not saying it's a bad day to be bad. From @Zach H. Armstrong, do we have a bias towards any certain type of player in Dynasty? He loves a good route runner like Judy or Deontay. I will say in my, not Dynasty, but real life, man, I love me a contested catch artist, the Des Bryants, Auden Tates of the world. I just feel like sometimes they get ridiculed. And at the end of the day, man, it's called a moss for a reason. Like, mossing someone looks freaking cool. Like, there's a reason why we don't say, you just rice someone by, just running past them or some shit. So I do think style points matter. And hell, Dwayne, I watch every freaking game, every single week, every single year. So yes, I do care about how someone styles. It gets me up in the morning sometimes. But in terms of actual Dynasty, I would say, I don't know about a certain type of player. I do generally just think, and more of an overarching goal is, definitely we know the wide receiver lifespan is longer in fantasy football. And because of that, in a startup, I'm going to be attacking wide receiver over running back majority of really rounds. But in terms of a specific, type of player, I wouldn't really say I have a big bias. What about you, Dwayne?
No, I don't have one. I'm
always hopefully good football players are biased towards guys that are good,
Yeah, I mean, in Dynasty, I have a bias, obviously, towards trying to be as young, as I can and still be competitive. But, I mean, that's really – I don't have anything more like what Zach's talking about, like, are they a good route runner or not? Now, I love watching a good route runner. Yeah. I like my favorite is just a player that gets targeted all the damn time.
There we go.
Whether he runs a good route or not.
From @nbray97. Do we have a third round running back at the turn that we're looking to snatch up at the moment? This would be about pick range 25 to 28. Again, don't have great ADP data at the moment. Looking forward to summer months where we get that. Based off some of the underdog stuff and just kind of the drafts Dwayne and I have done, I would say this could be guys like Saquon, maybe Elijah Mitchell if Debo ends up getting traded. We would prefer if Leonard Fournette falls that far, but I think that's unrealistic the closer we get to week 1. Maybe even Breece Hall. So I would say, Dwayne, someone in that Saquon, Elijah Mitchell, Breece Hall group could be interesting. Only if, though, we already got 2 wide receivers in those top 2 rounds. So I don't think there's necessary, I would say, if anything, the drafts that we've done together, the big takeaway I've had is in the first, 2-3 rounds, I would like to come away with 2 wide receivers if the board's falling my way.
Yeah, me too. I do think this is about where Fournette will settle in. Like, I think into the second, early third, he could surprise us and move a little more. But I think there's a chance he stays somewhere between the middle of the second to the middle of the third, depending on who you're drafting with. So I think there's a good shot that you'll be able to see a guy like Fournette sitting there at the turn.
Breece Hall in Buffalo, if that happens.
If Breece Hall went to Buffalo, yeah, he would be right there in that range, and we would be comfortable, with that. I'm trying to think like who else. I think that's pretty much it. Like you are going to see your Saquons. This year Swift's going a little bit earlier. Like Antonio Gibson's going in that range. I don't really want to touch him there.
Did you hear the news about Saquon? He's like really pumped for this year. He's been going crazy.
Excited.
He's excited, man.
Yeah, he's like everyone else. Like he's been going crazy with all the COVID stuff for 2 years. Yeah, I saw that. I thought you actually had like some news I had missed, and I was
of course not. Yeah, no, this is April NFL news, baby. What about we've talked a little about Elijah Mitchell. If Debo does get traded and they make it through the whole draft and they don't grab another running back, Mitchell is going to be in that RB1 conversation. I don't know that he'd be someone I'd be like looking to actively get though. He might be ranked around this area, but like Fournette would be someone that I'm drafting every time at this spot. Not sure we could say the same about Elijah Mitchell.
That is where Elijah Mitchell will move to if they trade Deebo Samuel and they do not draft a running back, because people will immediately assume that he's going to be more involved in the passing game, the lead back in a highly explosive rushing offense. So I think there would definitely be reasons to buy in. The reason to be scared would just be, 2 words, Kyle Shanahan. Like, we have no freaking clue, like, what the guy is going to do. And you're also not going to get any heads up from any beat reporter whatsoever.
Gotta love that. Before we keep on going, I want to give a quick shout out to some of our sponsors, specifically the motherland themselves, PFF. Right now, you can get 50% off a PFF Elite annual subscription. If you use code DRAFT50, 365 days of Elite, you can get all of the locked article content, PFF's NFL Draft Guide, and a completely unlocked mock draft simulator. Again, that's promo code DRAFT50 for 50% off a PFF Elite subscription. And get this, everyone, we are going to have a PFF Draft Show live for all 3 days of the NFL Draft, along with the Sunday recap and the special edition for this code, DRAFT50. If there is a running back drafted in the first round, you will get a free subscription for an entire year. Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, I don't freaking know. Maybe even Isaiah Spiller goes in the top 32 picks. You will get your subscription extended for a year. So go get 50% off. Maybe a running back gets drafted, and then you're good for a year, everyone. So if you're planning on doing this in the fall, for fantasy, for gambling, whatever, just do it now, and you have a chance to literally pay, 50% off the 1 year, and then you get another year free. You are not going to find a better deal. We'll have other deals for you throughout the year. Code Fantasy, maybe get you 25% off, something like this. Nothing better than what we have right now, though. Again, promo code DRAFT50, 50% off a PFF Elite annual subscription, and fingers crossed that running back goes in the top 32 picks. Dwayne, when I was on the real, PFF draft show last year, it was funny when Najee went to the Steelers, I got picked 24, and everyone on the desk is like, oh, this is so stupid, and just had nothing good to say.
The fantasy person's like jumping up and down.
I was like, let's go, we're about to get 300 touches. He was like offensive player of the year maybe, and they were making fun of that. But like, bro, like we saw, remember Todd Gurley, like in Jeff Fisher's horrific Rams offense, like still making plays. A first round running back is a fantasy darling, and fingers crossed the Bills decide at the end to make Breece Hall that next guy. So again, code DRAFT50, and fingers crossed a running back goes early. Also, quick shout out to our friends over at Manscaped. The only true guaranteed quality pickup this season is Manscaped, the leaders in below the waist grooming. With Manscaped Performance Package 4.0, your skill position will be sleek and smooth enough for a sub 4.340. Support us and head to manscaped.com and use the exclusive code PFF at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. 4.3 is just insane. Like that's like the top 1%, the top 1%. Say like a 4.8, 4.9. I mean, that's mad. I mean, I think people on Twitter, man, just egregiously overestimate their 40-yard dashes. Like people overestimate their 40-yard dash and like what animals they're capable of killing in like hand-to-hand combat. I appreciate the mindset. Arian Foster and the Wolf debacle, he was saying like you just got to have that mindset going into battle. But a 4.3, come on, Manscaped. But whatever, they are giving us 20% off and free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. Again, 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code PFF. Back to some questions from at SWF_podcast. Best rookies at 102 and 108 in a rookie draft for an RB needing team. He correctly is assuming Kenny Walker will be there at 102, wondering if he should reach for a running back or go wide receiver at 108. Yes, would assume Breece Hall, in which case, goes number one. Go ahead and grab Kenny Walker, number two. At 108, Dwayne, if one of Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, Treylon Burke are there, I think that might be too much value to pass up. If they're all gone...
Yeah, Gary, sorry, go ahead.
If they're all gone, then I think someone, like a Spiller, White, Pierce, whoever your cup of tea is reasonable at 108. Is that kind of your thought? I just think that tier one of wide receivers would be too good to go to our number 3 running back.
Yeah, I mean, all you're really trying to do in those two out of those picks, out of your, you're going pick 1 through 8. You have 2 picks in there. You got Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks, Jameson Williams, Drake London, Chris Olave, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. Like you're trying to come away with 2 of those. Obviously, I just gave you 7 names. So if you just missed there, then we'll have to see what happens with the draft. But I would say, George Pickens, Sky Moore, one of those players are like, we're gonna get a really good receiver end up, with either the Packers or the Chiefs that probably isn't one of the ones I've already named, right? So whether it's Jahan Dotson, whether
but what
it's
if we
Sky
get
Moore,
like a
whether
Spiller?
It's
What if we get a Spiller or a White in a good running back situation?
Yeah,
now,
you could.
Yeah.
No, I think Spiller or White in a good running back situation, obviously, could change things. If you're in a super flex, you could think about taking, a quarterback. The only quarterback I would take in this class, and even super flex would be Malik, just because the rushing upside. So yeah, I think that's actually a really good spot. I think the 107 is like the true cut for me, where I think you take a step down. But I really like Sky Moore. I really like George Pickens, so I feel good about those 2 players as well.
Ideally, you get 2 of those big 7, but if not, we should have a wide receiver or running back kind of make this into a big 8, big 9 based on the landing spots.
For sure.
Cool. From @Change College, wondering about explosive plays, basically, 20-plus yard plays and touchdowns outside the red zone. He's been doing some research on Tyreek's impact in Miami. So I just pulled some of these numbers. Since Patrick Mahomes has been under center for the Chiefs, 2018 and 2021, Kansas City number 2 in total explosive pass plays, number 1 easily. 57 passing touchdowns outside the red zone. I mean, we only have Tampa Bay, Dallas, and Pittsburgh over 40. Meanwhile, Miami actually ranking just 21st in total explosive pass plays outside the red zone, 22nd in touchdowns. In terms of the rate, KC at 19.1%, number 4, Miami all the way down to 24th at 14.4%. So yeah, Chiefs have been awesome. Miami, not so much. And I would firmly expect Tyreek to greatly help that category. I mean, you guys saw the difference in Alex Smith between what he was able to do early on in his career. And then that legitimate, I don't want to say MVP worthy, but we had that conversation a few times in 2016. Alex Smith was playing fantastic, and I believe was PFF's highest graded passer throwing downfield. So yeah, if Tyreek isn't going to help that to a deep ball, I am not sure what will.
And he doesn't even have to help the deep ball to help improve the 20-plus yard plays. Like now, all of a sudden, you got to deal with Hill and Waddle, who we know both have explosive playmaking ability, whether it's more rack or down the field. And really, Tyreek's sweet spot is honestly what he does, after you get the ball into his hands, not just, we all know the bombs where, Mahomes is back there running around, and he just kind of looks up and is like, oh, nobody can catch Tyreek now, and he throws it. But a lot of those explosive plays really come after the catch. So I think that's where Miami has the biggest chance to take a step forward.
From @DannyFootball59, one of the many tone setters out there. Always appreciate their contributions to Twitter. Just wondering how old Amari Cooper is, and just to answer that, he is forever 22, because some jokes never get old, just like Amari Cooper. From @BoltsChief, outlook on Nico Collins in Dynasty. Could he have a top 24 season in the next 2 to 3 years? Dwayne, when are the Texans actually going to start to, try to get good? It seems like they just want to rebuild every single year at this point. I mean, the wide receivers that they have on this roster right now are absolutely sad. Now, they did bring back Brandon Cooks, paid him. Apparently, he's going nowhere because that's the one player they want to build around. No disrespect to Brandon Cooks. He's awesome, but this is just hilarious to me that in 2 years, the one guy that they've been like, okay, we cannot possibly go forward as a franchise unless we lock down Brandon Cooks for the foreseeable future. I mean, this wide receiver room, Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, Chris Moore, Philip Dorsett, Chris Conley, Deshaun Hamilton, Jalen Camp, Damon Hazleton, Davion Davis. I did not make up any of those names. Look, he's a starting wide receiver. We've said this, if you're going to throw a dart later in drafts, it might as well be someone that's, in their team starting through wide receiver sets. Similar sentiment, Paris Campbell, Donovan Peoples-Jones, some of these other sleepers. In terms of what we saw last year, good. Not great necessarily, but flashed a little bit. I remember doing some pre-draft stuff. I actually had the pleasure of interviewing Nico, but when I was looking at potential 5-tool receivers, it was like Kyle Pitts was the only one that checked every single box, but Nico Collins was pretty close. And when you look at some of these past Michigan offenses, I think him and Donovan Peoples-Jones, better recruits, they have a lot of the attributes you look for, didn't necessarily have the production because of that Michigan system. So he's getting a chance, Dwayne. I don't think he has a stranglehold on this number 2 job or anything, but I could think of worse late round darts because again, he's a starting wide receiver that has at least some semblance of upside.
Yeah, so whenever I did, the study looking at the PFF wide receiver grades as rookies, he fell into Group 2, which had a far lower hit rate. Obviously, Group 1 was awesome. But most of those guys that fell into Group 2 that went on to hit were either a first or second round pick. And so Collins is not. He was a third round pick. But to your point, they don't really have anyone else. So I think, there is an opportunity that just on, volume alone, if he can take a step forward, he's going to have a chance. The third rounders that have, gone on to hit, T.Y. Hilton, Deontay Johnson, Kenny Golladay, they've all ended up posting top 12 seasons. So there are guys, and obviously Hilton, Deontay Johnson's games are different, right? Kenny Golladay is another bigger receiver, a little more along the lines of a Nico Collins. They play differently as well. But there is a shot. He could still make it into the top 24. But if you're saying, is it likely? Probably it's not likely. The odds are that he's not going to make it at this point based on what we've seen. So if you can still get something for him in a trade and you're in a dynasty league, go for it. If this is more of a redraft question and we're talking, hey, do you mind throwing a a dart at a receiver in round 15 of a draft, I think that's fine. Nico Collins is fine there if you're going to throw a dart at him as your wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6.
66.1 PFF receiving grade as a rookie. That puts him in that pretty terrible bucket, right, Dwayne? Where it's like, unless you're
man, you got to turn the no play off, Ian. But yeah, it's a 65.
I got it off. We're good.
You got to turn it on. Sorry, you got to turn it on for the PFF grade.
Okay.
But yeah,
okay.
I'm messing with you. Yes, you're right. It's in the right bucket. You're in the right bucket. I was just giving you a hard time. Still doesn't matter. He's in the same bucket we just talked about.
Not great. From @rosterproffer, do you have a draft strategy in mind for best ball post NFL draft without knowing rookie landing spots? Yeah, check out our best ball streams. We've had 2 of them, I think, go up. We'll get back to doing those after the draft this week. But Dwayne, I think your research, and you had an article about this, really is the most telling thing we found. We spoke a little bit earlier this podcast about preferring so far just the way ADP is set up to get, at least 2 wide receivers in the first 3 or 4 rounds, not looking like the year that we're going to take an early tight end. But what's really interesting is all the available resources really in rounds 7 through 10. And as you laid it out, you can really do any strategy you want in the top 6 rounds. Just go get almost the best player you have there. And then there's enough value in these rounds 7 through 10 to complete your roster and put you in a good spot going into rounds 11 and beyond.
Yep. That's absolutely it. And I would say, just go back and read the article, the reverse engineering article that I threw out there. Also had an article about players to buy now versus after the draft versus ones that you probably want even exposure on. And then once we have the draft, we'll update those, and then you won't have to look at those anymore.
Truly, I mean, this is some of, I think some of your best work of this offseason, Dwayne, just making it. And I want to replicate this for when people are actually doing, our more important, home drafts ahead of August, but just really showing you guys and giving buckets of like, hey, if you exit these first 7 rounds with this type of player group, here are the targets you can be looking at in future rounds. So if you've enjoyed that, get ready for freaking more, because we want all of you to win each and every league you're in come September. From if you follow Matt, who's the must grab and who's the must fade from this rookie wide receiver class? I do wonder, Dwayne, if we're looking, because you talked about it, if George Pickens or Sky Moore, if a legit high-end receiver goes to Green Bay or Kansas City, I'm fine bumping them up. But what if we get a Christian Watson type, someone that really is outside of a lot of people's top 8, even like top 10 wide receivers? Because we always think we know this better than we actually do. Like last year we had Tutu Atwell, Dwayne Eskridge, a lot of guys I think going higher than expected. And remember, the Packers drafted a day 2 wide receiver last year, and they had a pretty depleted wide receiver room, and he didn't do anything, Amari Rodgers. So I'm not saying every single wide receiver that comes in is going to be as little use as Amari. I understand he, had his own problems when he did get brief chances earlier in the season to try to make his name. But I would say, be careful about really shooting someone up the draft boards. That would be maybe, again, Christian Watson, the Green Bay. That'd probably be a situation where I'm fading. And maybe even KC, man, MVS and Juju and Mecole, just because they draft the first or even second round wide receiver doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be starting come week 1. And then in terms of who's the must grab, again, if we get better news on Jameson Williams, man, he might just have that sort of top 10 draft capital. I think if he gets top 10, Dwayne, we're going to be bringing up the same stats we used last year to talk about why Jalen Waddle was a must grab at ADP. So right now, I think Jameson Williams could be that guy in the wide receiver 4 range that ends up being a wide receiver 2, and then just be really careful who ends up with KC and Green Bay. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is another one, not to sound like a broken record, but there's an article out there that's got expected draft position along with everything about the player. So it's using, the model is based on, we're not supposed to say model on the show, Ian, I need to chug a beer or something, but it's based on rookie age, expected draft position, college production, and we say, for the receivers, we say screw the combine. We don't care about the combine for receivers. We totally just kick it to the curb. And anybody tells you that the combine is a must thing for receivers, they're just lying to you. So forget about it. But I did pull in things that actually matter. Can a player be explosive on the field? So career explosive target rate, also best yards per route run season. It's got some historical stuff that a lot of the Dynasty community loves. Jetpack Galileo will get all over the Dominator thing, because over the last 3 years, I think it has a negative correlation. But over time, overall, the Dominator rating does have a positive, has a positive correlation, to future success. So draft capital, college production, age-adjusted college production, and then, some of these explosive metrics. And they all go together to really give you the way it should look. But basically, those first two tiers, Ian, I think are kind of all the guys like that. And really, John Mechie needs to move up because his expected draft capital is like now into the 60s. So this was as of last week. So I was just looking at it this morning, and yeah, he's creeping up. Doug Kite knew what he was talking about, man. Like it's climbing. Like I think he was the first guy on that.
Dwayne, I think here's a good way of this question. Here are your tier 2 wide receivers: Sky Moore, George Pickens, Jahan Dotson, Christian Watson, Wandale Robinson, David Bell, and if you want to put John Mechie there, that's fine. Tier 3, we have Justin Ross, Khalil Shakir, and Jalen Tolbert. Out of them, I feel like maybe Moore, Pickens, potentially Dotson. If they go to Green Bay or Kansas City, we might be willing to bump them up to tier 1 and get behind them. After them, I don't know.
Yeah, the only way they would bump up, like at this point, is they've got to be, so that's a cool thing that we're doing this week. So for the folks, you can kind of get ready for it. Like for each of these players as they get drafted, we'll be doing a tracker, and there's going to be two components to it. There's going to be one, like the profile of the player based on all these things we just talked about, and then there's landing spots. So everybody's going to have a landing spot grade essentially. And so to Ian's point, you land in a spot like Green Bay where there's literally it's wide open. Like we already talked about some of the issues with Allen Lazard, et cetera, et cetera. And if you were to go into the first round, like the model's going to bump you up in the first, if you go in the first round, that's going to be one. Number two, the landing spot. If you land in Green Bay, it's wide open depth chart and you have a quality quarterback. So not only do you have a quantity potentially of opportunity if you can earn it, but also quality of opportunity. So I don't know, man. I think like Wandale Robinson, I probably wouldn't put there. But like even David Bell, the only thing holding David Bell down, like to tell you like how good he is, he's sitting here like if he hadn't done all he had done from a production standpoint in college, like he should easily be down in tier 3. But he was so good in college, and you can see all that sweet blue right in the middle of the chart on David Bell for career dominator, best dominator, his 30% breakout age, all those things. Those are the things holding him in tier 2. So if all of a sudden David Bell, for example, did go in the early second or he's not going to go in the first round, but if the Packers say traded up to get him somewhere in the second round, like David Bell's like going to shoot up, as far as, where we're going to have him in these ranks. Like he's the guy that could move up the most, honestly, because he shouldn't even still be sitting here. He's just sitting there because he was so good in all these other metrics. But Wandale Robinson's the one that I'm the most concerned about. It's still sitting in that tier, and it's really because he's really been more of a gadget player.
Got 5 more questions to run through, none of which are too big. From @TLenny4 Browns, favorite fantasy player on the Browns this year. Dwayne, I think they're all a little bit overvalued, unfortunately. Okay, we can throw a dart at Donovan Peoples-Jones, but I think the
Kareem Hunt, man. It's Kareem Hunt. You get Kareem Hunt in round 8.
That's true.
Like it's explosive playmaker with receiving ability. Like if you can check those two boxes, because the season's crazy. Chubb gets hurt, like he gets an increase in values. Dearness Johnson's still going to be in the way, yeah. But I think at that point I think he's easily going to pay off. Even if Chubb's healthy all year, Dearness Johnson's healthy all year, Kareem Hunt's going to pay off at his ADP right now. The only path is really for Kareem Hunt to move up based on those other things. Obviously, he could get injured, right? And that would hurt him. But I think he's the guy for the Browns for me.
I hate with Kareem Hunt a little bit. Like we don't have that best case scenario anymore where Chubb gets hurt and Hunt just steps into like this 80% plus workhorse role. I do think that Dearness would be in there, probably making it closer to 60-40. But based on that value, I do think it would have to be Kareem Hunt. Also, shout out David Njoku. He's firmly in that late round tight end conversation. Let's make sure he doesn't creep up too high. He's not someone I want to be looking at as a top 12, 13 tight end. We usually draw the line. Zach Ertz is still going like tight end 12, 13, but you can usually get him or Gronk or one of these guys later. So I don't want to start with Njoku, but I think in best ball, particularly if he can be your second tight end, you're doing something okay. From @Mike_B, DJ Moore or Michael Pittman in Dynasty. I would go with Pittman this year, but Dynasty land, I gotta go with DJ Moore. You agree, Dwayne?
Yeah. I still think DJ Moore is the more talented player. They're close in age. And I've got him really close even this year, but I'm fine giving the edge, to the guy that's got a little bit better situation in Pittman with Matt Ryan at quarterback.
From @BigE_Houston, not a question, just take. Davis Mills going to have a great sophomore leap next season. You heard it here first from @BigE_Houston, everyone. I love it. Let's go. Dwayne Davis Mills, he's going to be the starter. Threw for 300 yards a few times. It's just, he could be, I guess, your third best ball quarterback. Like, we don't have a ceiling here, do we?
I don't think we do, but I mean, look, he's still where I've got Davis Mills ranked in my ranks. It's basically at least there's the allure of the unknown versus a lot of the guys you'll see below him. It's like, yeah, these guys suck. We know what they are. With Davis Mills, like there's still a chance, like he could surprise us because we only have this little small sample with him. So it's like I'd rather buy into the unknown, right, than a player that we may know more about, but we just know there's no ceiling.
Final two questions. USFL additions from at Timbo Slice 003 asking about the PFF grades to CSV. Basically, we aren't giving away the USFL data specifically for subscribers, but I am giving you guys basically everything you need in my review article that's live on PFF.com right now and will be every Monday after the game. So check those out and should be easy enough to get most of the stats from the games, the routes and all that. Now for the team grades, I will publish those on Thursday in my preview article, which you also should be able to easy enough copy and paste. Not really a clean way to get this CSV, unfortunately, for like the NFL team grades, but we have ways of doing it kind of behind the scenes with Ultimate. So at Timbo Slice 003, if you have like something specific you're looking for, just DM me on Twitter at Hartitz, as you know, and I can probably hook you up with whatever you're looking for. And finally, from at Sports Nuts 420, great name. How did the experts get it so wrong with the undefeated Birmingham Stallions? My number 8 team, my power rankings before the season, now all of a sudden looking like number 2 after 2 weeks. Alex Magoo getting hurt has led to Jamar Smith going in and basically working as the player of the week in 2 straight games. Right now, I think the only team executing better level overall is the New Orleans Breakers. So yeah, I didn't think Skip Holtz was going to do much. He hadn't been a good coach in a minute, and Alex Magoo was looking like one of the worst quarterbacks. All the credit in the world to Jamar Smith, for stepping up, making big things happen out there. So yeah, starting quarterback got hurt and the backup winds up being better. As we said in the preseason, though, big thing about USFL is to be quick to change our opinions. Because Dwayne, what the hell is the point of learning new information if we aren't going to try to be a little smarter with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just go with what you just said. I think you nailed that one.
Amen to that. That's going to wrap up this edition of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed the Q&A formats. And again, we'll be back with much more of that throughout the offseason. We'll also get this hooked up with YouTube to get you guys like live comments and that as well. Fun little schedule this week. Had the USFL pod and this go out today. Tomorrow, Dwayne and I will be back previewing our top 5 rookie rankings before the draft. Wednesday, we're going to quickly knock out our USFL Week 2 preview. And then after the draft, Thursday, after the draft, Friday, we'll be going live to talk about everything that just happened. Back here again next Monday to really break down the whole draft. So, Dwayne, we got a shit ton of stuff going on over the next week. And then like football's back to being dead again. We will not be, but whatever. Great week to be great.
Great week to be great. No, I'm looking forward to it. And we'll have some stuff set up so as the draft's going and happening, obviously we'll be putting out content, but then coming on right after each night, I think it's going to be awesome because we'll have all the models and things that we've been sharing with you. My goal is to have them all ready in where boom, we just put the draft pick in and we update it's ready to rock. We can talk about what just happened. So yeah, I'm excited.
At Dwain McFarland on Twitter. The man's awesome. Why are you not following him? You should be. It's just dumb if you're not. So for Dwayne, I'm Ian. Thanks so much for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Until next time, take care, everybody.